My name is Ava Morgan Whitfield and I turned 16 standing barefoot on the front porch while my mother held out a black garbage bag like it was a birthday present. She didn't say happy birthday. She didn't hug me. She just pushed the bag against my chest and said I had 10 minutes to take it and leave before the locks were changed. At first, I thought it was some kind of punishment. One of those cruel family moments that would end with someone laughing and telling me I was too sensitive. But then my father walked out behind her with my car keys in his hand and told me the car was gone. Sold. Title was in his name anyway. My phone started ringing in my pocket. Probably my alarm still going off for school, and my mother snatched it before I could stop her. She threw it into the street so hard the screen cracked against the curb. Then she looked at me and said, "Plans can lead. Figure it out." From upstairs, my little sister stood in my old bedroom window, smiling like she had just won something. She waved at me and mouthed, "Finally got my space." That was when I realized this had not happened in anger. This had been planned. My clothes were packed. My room was already taken. My insurance was cancelled. My savings were gone. And the people who were supposed to protect me had erased me before breakfast. I slept at a bus station that night with one garbage bag, a broken phone, and no idea that 30 days later, those same people would be calling me 35 times a day, begging me to come back. Before I tell you what they wanted and why they suddenly needed the daughter they threw away. Tell me this, what time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. My mother's name was Marissa Parker, and she had a talent for making cruelty sound like responsibility. My father's name was Ken Parker, and he had a talent for hiding behind paperwork. Together, they could explain anything away if it benefited them. My little sister's name was Belle, and from the time she was old enough to point her toes in a pink leotard, my entire family revolved around her. Belle was not just a kid who liked dance. She was the dream. She was the investment. She was the reason we skipped vacations. The reason bills were paid late. The reason every weekend belonged to competitions, rehearsals, costume fittings, private coaching, and hotel rooms near convention centers. My mother called it sacrifice. My father called it building a future. I called it watching my own childhood get traded in piece by piece for someone else's spotlight. If Belle forgot her dance shoes, everyone panicked. If I forgot lunch money, I was told to be more responsible. If Belle cried because she placed second instead of first, the whole house went silent around her pain. If I came home with straight A's, my mother glanced at the report card and asked if I could cover the dinner shift at home because Belle had rehearsal. I learned early that being good did not make me loved. It only made me easier to ignore. The house we lived in was not even theirs. It belonged to my grandmother, Nora Whitfield, my mother's mother. Grandma Nora had bought that house decades earlier, back when the neighborhood was quiet and the maple trees were still young. She let us live there rent-free after my parents said they needed help getting back on their feet. That was the phrase they used for years. Getting back on our feet, but somehow their feet never quite touched the ground. There was always another dance fee, another emergency, another excuse for why Grandma had to cover property taxes or repairs. My parents acted like the house was theirs because they had lived in it long enough to believe comfort was the same thing as ownership. Grandma Nora loved me in a way nobody else did. She remembered my birthdays. She asked what books I was reading. She told me I was allowed to take up space. But over the years, I saw her less and less. My mother said Grandma was tired. My father said she did not like driving at night. Belle said old people were boring anyway. Sometimes Grandma would mention sending me cards I never received. Sometimes she would ask if I liked the sweater she mailed, and I would have no idea what she was talking about. My mother always jumped in fast, saying the package must have been delayed or lost. I believed that until I got older and started noticing Belle wearing things I had never seen before. New jackets, new dance warm-ups, little gold necklaces my mother claimed were prizes from competitions. Once when I was 14, I heard my mother and father arguing in the kitchen. I was halfway down the stairs holding a laundry basket when my mother said, "If Mom ever finds out how much of her money went to Belle, we are done." My father told her to keep her voice down. Then he said, "Ava does not ask questions. She never has." That sentence stayed in my head for 2 years. Ava does not ask questions. Maybe that was why they thought they could hand me a garbage bag on my 16th birthday and I would just disappear quietly. Maybe that was why they thought breaking my phone would break my connection to the world. Maybe that was why they thought selling the old Honda Grandma had helped buy for me would not matter because the title was in my father's name. They were wrong. I may not have asked questions out loud, but I had spent years watching. I watched my mother praise like she was a miracle and look at me like I was a receipt she regretted keeping. I watched my father use technicalities to excuse every selfish thing he did. I watched my sister learn that if she wanted something, all she had to do was make me lose it. The morning they threw me out, Belle already had boxes in my room, not empty boxes. Her trophies were on my dresser. Her dance mirror was leaning against my wall. My bed had new sheets I had never seen before. She had not moved in after I left. She had moved in before I knew I was being erased. That was the part that made my chest feel hollow. This was not a family losing control in one terrible moment. This was a plan. My birthday was just the deadline. The first night, I slept in the bus station because it was the only building I knew would stay open late. I sat against the far wall with my garbage bag between my knees and my cracked phone pressed to my chest like it could still protect me. The screen was shattered and the service was dead. But when I held it at the right angle, I could still see the time. Every hour felt heavier than the last. At midnight, I was officially 16 years and 1 day old. And nobody had called. Not my mother, not my father, not my sister. Nobody checked if I was safe. Nobody checked if I was alive. I kept waiting for guilt to hit them. It never did. By morning, my back hurt from sitting upright, and my throat felt raw from trying not to cry. I walked to the public library. Because it had free Wi-Fi and bathrooms where I could wash my face. I logged into my school email and stared at the screen for almost 10 minutes before typing one message to my manager at the diner. Her name was Elenina Ruiz. She owned a small breakfast place near the edge of town where I worked weekends and a few evenings after school. I told her there had been a family emergency and asked if I could still come in for my shift. I did not tell her I had been kicked out. I did not tell her I had nowhere to sleep. I was afraid that if I said the truth out loud, someone would send me back to the house and I could not survive being thrown away twice. Elenina replied within 5 minutes. She said, "Come in. We will figure it out." Those 4 words were more kindness than I had gotten from my own parents in years. At the diner, she noticed immediately. Of course she did. My hair was messy. My shoes did not match because my mother had packed 1 old sneaker and 1 school shoe and I kept flinching every time someone raised their voice. Elena did not push at first. She gave me breakfast, let me charge my phone, and asked if I had a safe place to sleep. I lied and said yes. She looked at me like she knew better, but respected that I was not ready. That afternoon, I used the library computer to search for youth shelters. I found 1-2 bus rides away that accepted teenagers in emergency situations. The woman at the front desk asked questions I did not know how to answer. Was I in immediate danger? Did I have a guardian? Had anyone harmed me? Had I contacted school staff? I kept saying I just needed a place for a few nights. She gave me a bed, a locker, a hygiene kit, and a stack of forms that made my hands shake. That bed was not comfortable, but it had a roof over it. For the first time since my birthday morning, I slept lying down. The next 30 days became a routine built out of fear and stubbornness. I went to school. I went to work. I went back to the shelter. I kept my head down and my grades up because school was the only part of my life that still made sense. My counselor, Mr. Hayes, started watching me closely after I wore the same hoodie 3 days in a row. He asked if everything was okay at home. I said things were complicated. He said complicated was not the same as safe. I almost told him then, but I pictured my mother walking into the school office with that cold, calm face, telling everyone I was dramatic, rebellious, ungrateful, and I swallowed the truth. My parents were very good at sounding reasonable to strangers. I was scared they would win. I opened a new bank account with my diner tips and the $72 I had hidden in a pencil case. I saved every receipt. I screenshotted Belle's Instagram story when she posted a picture of my old room with the caption, "Finally have space to breathe." I took pictures of my cracked phone, my garbage bag, the shelter wristband, the missed school bus passes, everything. I did not know exactly why I was saving proof. I just knew that when people like my parents tell lies, evidence becomes oxygen. On day 12, I found out my health insurance had been cancelled. I was at the school nurse because I had gotten dizzy during gym. And when she tried to look up my coverage, nothing was active. I remember sitting there with my hands folded in my lap, feeling smaller than I had felt even on the porch. Canceling a birthday dinner is one thing. Canceling your child's ability to see a doctor is something else. On day 18, Elena quietly put me on more shifts and started sending me home with food that she pretended was a mistake. On day 22, Mr. Hayes called me into his office again and said he was worried. I told him I was staying somewhere safe. He asked if my parents knew where I was. I said they were the reason I was not at home. His face changed, but before he could ask more, the bell rang and I used it as an excuse to leave. On day 30, I bought a cheap prepaid phone because Elena said I needed a reliable number for work and emergencies. I gave the number to Elena, the shelter intake desk, and nobody else. That night, I was folding napkins after closing when the phone started buzzing. Unknown number. I ignored it. Then another call. Then another. By the time I got back to the shelter, I had 21 missed calls. By midnight, I had 35. And when the first voicemail played, I heard my mother's voice for the first time in a month. Not calm anymore, not cold anymore, but shaking with panic. My mother did not start with an apology. People like her never do. Her first voicemail said, "Ava, this has gone far enough. Call me back right now." Her second said, "Your grandmother is asking for you and you are being unbelievably selfish." Her third said, "I know you are listening. Stop punishing everyone." By the 10th message, my father's voice appeared sharper and lower. He said this was bigger than my attitude problem. He said Grandma Nora had fallen and was in the hospital. He said she was upset because she thought I hated the family. And if I had any decency left, I would come home and fix the stress I had caused. Fix the stress I had caused. I replayed that part 3 times just to make sure I heard it correctly. I had slept in a bus station because they locked me out. I had eaten leftover toast from a diner because they emptied my savings. I had been walking to school with a cracked phone and one garbage bag of clothes because they decided my sister needed my room more than I needed a home. And somehow in their version, I was still the problem. Belle texted from a number I did not recognize. At first, she wrote like she was bored. "Grandma keeps asking for you. Mom is freaking out." Then she got mean. "If Grandma gets worse because you are being dramatic, that is on you." I stared at that message for a long time. There was my sister sitting in the room she stole from me, calling me dramatic for not running back to the people who had erased me. I screenshotted it. Then I screenshotted every missed call. I wrote down the times in a notebook Elena had given me. I did not call back right away. That may sound cold, but those 30 days had taught me something. When you have nothing, information is protection. If I answered too soon, they would control the conversation. If I waited, they would reveal what they actually wanted. And they did. Around 1 in the morning, my mother left a voicemail that changed everything. She said, "Grandma keeps saying she knows what we did. She is confused. Ava, she is saying things about the house and papers, and you need to come tell her you are fine before she makes this worse." The house and papers. Not I miss my daughter. Not I am sorry. Not. Are you safe? The house and papers. I sat on the shelter bed with my knees pulled to my chest and felt the first clear piece of the puzzle click into place. Grandma Nora had found out something. My parents were not scared because she was hurt. They were scared because she was talking. The next morning, I played the messages for Elalina before my shift. She listened without interrupting, her face getting harder with each one. When the last message ended, she said, "Ava, adults who are telling the truth do not sound like that." Mr. Hayes said something similar when I finally showed him the call log. He did not raise his voice. He did not act shocked in a way that made me feel like a problem. He just asked where I had been staying, if I had food, if I felt safe, and whether I wanted help contacting the hospital. I told him I wanted to go, but not because my parents asked. I wanted to see Grandma Nora. She was the only person in that family who ever looked at me and saw a human being instead of an inconvenience. I borrowed bus money from Elalina, even though she told me it was not borrowing, and took 2 buses across town to the hospital. During the ride, my phone kept buzzing. My mother called 11 times. My father called 5. Bell called from 2 different numbers. I did not answer. I looked out the window and remembered being 8 years old, sitting at Grandma Nora's kitchen table while she taught me how to make pancakes. She let me crack the eggs even when I got shells in the bowl. She told me mistakes meant I was learning, not failing. Nobody had said anything like that to me in years. By the time I reached the hospital, my hands were cold even though it was warm outside. I walked up to the front desk, gave Grandma's name, and asked for her room. The nurse typed, paused, and looked back at me. She asked my relationship. I said granddaughter. She checked again and said my name was not on the approved visitor list. For a moment, I thought I misheard her. My family had called me 35 times a day demanding that I come. They had said Grandma needed me. They had said I was cruel for staying away. But when I finally got there, they had made sure I could not get in. That was when I knew for sure. They did not want me to comfort Grandma. They wanted to control what Grandma said before I heard it. I waited in the hospital lobby for almost 2 hours. Every time the elevator doors opened, I looked up. I was tired, hungry, and angry in a way that felt almost calm. That was new for me. I used to think anger meant yelling or crying or shaking. But this anger was different. It was quiet. It was focused. It sat beside me like a witness. Finally, my mother walked out of the elevator carrying a paper coffee cup and a plastic bag from the cafeteria. When she saw me, her face changed so quickly I almost laughed. First relief, then fear, then that familiar mother mask sliding into place. She rushed toward me with her arms half open like we were in some emotional reunion scene. "Thank God," she said. "You came." I stepped back before she could touch me and said, "You forgot to put me on the visitor list." Her mouth opened. Then closed. She said it must have been an oversight. I asked whose oversight since she had called me all night begging me to come. She looked toward the front desk, lowered her voice, and told me not to make a scene. That was my mother in one sentence. Throw your child out on her birthday, then worry about the scene. She spoke to the nurse and suddenly, magically, I was allowed upstairs.